So when I saw the title of this, I'm an optimist, so I thought I see green everywhere. So I've given you a flavor of my speech already. So good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the UAE Ministry of Energy and Gulf Intelligence for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that the vast amount of hydrocarbon resources that have shaped the development of the Gulf region and the wider Middle East are plentiful. And there's no arguing that in the long term, these resources will continue to be a critical part of the energy mix. But I believe the future belongs to renewable energy, not just in this region, but globally. And that's what I'd like to discuss with you today. The potential for renewable energy in this region is enormous, right? We know the region is blessed with lots of sunshine, strong winds in some areas, and powerful rivers. In particular, MENA's solar potential is considered to be much higher than all of its other renewable resources combined. According to the World Bank, this region receives between 22 to 26% of all the solar energy available on this planet. Having said that, in addition to solar, MENA also has significant wind potential, particularly in areas in North Africa. Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia have one of the highest wind speeds in the world. So what are governments doing about harnessing this energy in this region? The region today has about 19,000 megawatts of energy, of electricity generation from renewable resources. Most of it is in hydroelectric, and most of it is public hydroelectric power in countries such as Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Morocco, and Syria. But I believe governments in the region are beginning to focus on this potential. And recent incentives introduced by some governments could result in up to 100 gigawatts of installed capacity in this region in the next 15 to 20 years. These are encouraging statements, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because I believe the region can do much more to develop renewable resources. Today, and I think Richard hinted at it, the region accounts for less than 4% of its energy consumption from renewable energy. This compares to 17% for the world, right? So I do believe that there's a wide gap, and I think the region can close that gap. But the question is, how does the region realize this potential? And there are 4 factors, I think, that need to be looked at, right? First and foremost is governments need to create an enabling environment and the right regulatory contractual frameworks for this energy to happen. Despite large-scale renewable energy initiatives that have been launched in some countries, there are no regulatory or contractual frameworks in place today. So, for example, if you want to put up a wind plant in Egypt, it's unclear who you sell the power to and how much you get for your energy. And this is a major deterrent, right? And it's an easier deterrent to fix. Energy subsidies. Right. According to recent reports, this region accounts for 50% of global energy subsidies. Hence, electricity production in this region does not reflect the true cost of fossil fuels. And this results in misleading conclusions and inappropriate comparisons between end-user tariffs, cost of subsidized hydrocarbon-based generation, and the cost of renewable energy. So the right price signals are missing for people to make investments in the renewable energy space. Thirdly, grid capacity. So once you generate all the kilowatt hours, they need to go into the grid, right? It's estimated that countries in this region will have to spend over $30 billion in the next 5 years to make sure enough grid capacity is available to transport the kilowatt hours. Finally, lack of reliable resource data. What I mean by that is lack of resource data on wind speeds, wind availability, solar resource, and in some cases, hydrological data. Once you have the data, it's easy for investors to make investment decisions. So countries need to undertake resource measurement campaigns to reduce this uncertainty for investors. Globally, this is a time of change for the renewable energy industry. In the past, High costs of renewable energy technology, like solar panels and wind turbines, had made investors very wary of this sector. But that is changing. For example, rapid advancements have made solar voltaic cells dramatically cheaper than they were even 3 years ago. According to Bloomberg Energy Finance, installation costs of a utility-scale solar PV plant has dropped by over 40% since 2010, right? And is expected to drop further by 2020, something to the order of 20 to 25%. Wind turbine prices have been declining, and newer, more efficient turbines are being developed, particularly for areas which have low to medium wind speeds. And as a result of all of this, today, wind and solar energy already rival conventional technology when subsidies for fossil fuels are excluded from that equation. So I believe the balance is expected to swing further in the favor of renewables as this technology changes. And this changing landscape leads to greater opportunities for investors. The World Bank estimates that by 2040, total investment needs in the energy sector in MENA will exceed 30 billion a year, right? Which is about 3% of projected regional GDP. And I believe the fastest growing segment of this market will be investment in renewable energy. And we're already seeing some activity across the region. The region attracted substantial capital in 2012, about $3 to $4 billion in renewable energy, which is a 40% increase from 2011. But it's still coming off a low base, and it's still a very small amount compared to global investment in renewable energy. The UAE has become a major player in the renewable energy scene, with Abu Dhabi commencing operations on the 100 megawatt Shams solar thermal plant. Dubai has announced major plans to develop, such as the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park, which has a capacity of up to 1,000 megawatts. And this October saw the inauguration of a 13 megawatt photovoltaic plant. At 13 megawatts, this is the largest grid-connected solar PV plant in the region. And there are plans to do a 100 megawatt solar PV plant, and even wind, 30 megawatt wind at Baniyas. Another country is Jordan. It's becoming one of the prime destinations for renewable energy investment in this region. There are plentiful solar and wind resources, and the government hopes to generate 10% of its electricity need by renewables in the next 5 years. And it has already reached closure on one project, which is a 117 megawatt wind plant, which is partly invested by Masdar of the UAE. And there's a potential of about 600 megawatts of renewables. The government of Egypt has announced a long-term strategy to generate 20% of its energy from renewables. And with the Red Sea, it's an ideal location with solar and wind plants. And we expect potentially up to 7,000 megawatts of wind and over 1,000 megawatts of solar from Egypt. Morocco has announced plans to achieve 2,000 megawatts of wind and 2,000 megawatts of solar by 2020. And has already started construction on what is one of the largest concentrated solar plants in the world, the 160 megawatt facility at Ozazat. And this is the first of many projects that are announced. And finally, the greatest potential renewable energy in this region is in Saudi Arabia. The country has ambitious plans to develop its vast solar resources and wants to have over 41,000 megawatts of solar, 9,000 megawatts of wind, by 2030. There are plans to develop waste to energy and 1,000 megawatts of geothermal as well. So if I step back and see what this sector would look like in 2020, and I think maybe 2020 is too short a time frame, so let's say 2025. In my view, in this region, the renewable energy sector will grow tremendously. As I said, it's probably going to be the fastest growing segment of the energy sector here. Conventional thermal generation will likely remain a large source of power generation, but we will see momentum shift towards renewables. The cost of solar PV will be much lower, as I said, probably up to 25% lower. And we should see more and more utility scale PV developments, such as the one we're seeing in Dubai. Globally, in terms of technology, energy storage technologies will have improved. And this will allow wind and solar to become a part of the baseload generation, which will help it displace fossil fuels. Drinking water is a very important critical issue for this region. And I feel that drinking water shortages will force the application of creative renewable energy solutions, such as solar desalination, which is already being piloted in certain areas. And I feel that over this time frame, that will begin to commercialize. And finally, when you look at energy consumption in the region, cooling buildings is a big portion of energy consumption. And I hope that similar to doing water desalination through renewable, we'll look at solar power technology to do cooling. Technology exists, question of piloting it and commercializing it. So by this time frame, I believe the rise of renewable energy should result in a reduction in fossil fuels subsidies. And I hope that the tremendous fiscal resources that are currently used to subsidize energy in this region will then be put to more productive uses. Before I close, just to focus on IFC's role, we are an investor in this region, providing debt and equity capital. And one of our central pillars of our efforts in this region is to help the private sector and governments realize the potential of renewable energy. And in this respect, we've helped Jordan achieve financial close on its first wind project. We're also working with the government of Morocco on the solar thermal. And in addition, we're looking to explore new investments in the Gulf and the wider region. Again, these are just examples of what we're doing. Finally, there are tremendous opportunities here for governments and private companies that are open to renewable energy. And we feel, and I feel, the future is bright. Thank you very much.